So here's the deal. It's early December and it's right at the beginning of our STV production season, but it overlaps a little bit with my racing season. So to do both, I have to bring you with me here to Austin, Texas, Dakota to do both. But don't worry, there's still plenty of snowmobiling in this show, and it's going to start right now in a little town approximately 3,825.627 kilometers northeast of here, and this town has the best name ever to go snowmobiling in, Chibougamau. One of the best parts of being involved with the Snowmobile television show is the places you get to go and ride. Now, they're all special, but there's always destinations that stand out, and Chibougamau is one of those places for me. What made my trip here so special was being invited to participate in the President's Ride with 700 other riders or so, all on vintage iron. The President's Ride is also the culmination of a week-long festival in Chibougamau, where it seems the whole town participates in the activities. The ride is basically a poker run, but there's more points awarded for the older your sled is, so that's why there's such a vintage flavor to this event. You'll see everything from wooden ski and black dot Skidoo Olympics all the way up to more modern machines, but clearly the emphasis is on old iron. My ride for this event was a late 60s Skidoo with an Arctic Cat transplanted engine. The sled was supplied by Dax, one of the locals here helping us out on this tour. Now, I didn't care that it wasn't a pure do, I was just excited for the experience. For the ride, it was approximately a 60-kilometer loop out and back to town, which doesn't sound like much, but on an older sled, that's a monumental ride. Just making it was an accomplishment, and throughout the route, sleds were being repaired or towed in a leave no man behind attitude. The community spirit and sheer willpower made sure all the sleds made it back to town. The circuit, you could say, got a little rough. With so many sleds participating, all traveling the same route, there were one or two spine tinglers that the 2.6 inches of travel on the rear of my ride just couldn't soak up. My poor back was beat to a pulp on the ride, but I didn't care at all. I was having such a great time, high on vintage two-stroke smoke and fun. Back in town, there's other activities to acquire points to improve your poker hand, with the day finishing up at the arena for an awards ceremony and celebration. Looking back on this ride, it's one of the most fun I've had while traveling around for STV. Now, if you're into vintage and would like to participate in an amazing event, I highly recommend traveling to Chibougamau to participate in this one. You won't regret it. Now, if you're not into riding your old vintage sled, or maybe you want to bring along a more modern snowmobile, the trails here are about as good as you can get too. Chibougamau is located pretty centrally in Quebec, which means it's high enough north that it gets lots of cold and lots of snow. Plus, snowmobiling is a real part of the community here, so that the trail system that's developed is built and maintained with a passion you'll only find in Quebec. So good are the two words that always come to mind when riding in this province. And if a Quebec sledding adventure, specifically in Chibougamau, isn't on your snowmobile destination bucket list, well, it should be. I think when it comes to our leisure travel activities, no matter if it's on a snowmobile or a sightseeing destination or a racing location, getting to go to a bucket list destination is really what drives our choices. For me, getting to come here and race at COTA just checks off another list on the tracks I want to experience in my life. Getting to ride snowmobiles in the province of Quebec in a place like Chibougamau crossed off another of my snowmobiling bucket list destinations. Now, last season when we got the chance to go back to Chibougamau, I wasn't able to, so we asked a good friend of ours, Neil Graham, if he could pick up the torch. Neil joined our team with a little bit of snowmobiling experience, but a lot of motorcycle experience. We wanted a fresh take on the ride in the province of Quebec, and Neil has a very unique perspective on his experience there. I'm going to continue with the race here in Texas while Neil takes you back to the province of Quebec.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be an adult, like every kid, and all the cool guys rode motorcycles. So that's where my interest in motorcycling began. Dirt bikes, street bikes, and then eventually racing. And then after that, I became editor of Cycle Canada magazine. But before that, I was a sled guy, a snowmobile fanatic. I couldn't wait for winter. Summer was this inconvenience. But then I moved to the city and didn't ride a snowmobile for years, a lot of years. And when I rode a snowmobile again, I discovered that it was really similar to long-distance off-road riding. You have to be mindful of hours of daylight, where you can buy food, fuel, and more than anything else, you have to be aware of weather. Heavy rain can make dirt trails all but impassable on a motorcycle, and heavy snow brings its own challenges for a snowmobiler. On a motorcycle, I've ridden in some of the best places in the world, on the best roads and trails in the world. Northern California, Italy, South Africa, Portugal, Spain, and a whole bunch of other places. And what I learned from this trip is that Quebec is one of the best places in the world to snowmobile. And for those of us that live in the East, it's next door. It's right there. You've got to go. Seriously, go. Going to Chibougamau, and it's the best name for a town ever, like Jeff says, was an eye-opener. I mean, first of all, modern sleds are incredible, so unbelievably capable. And I didn't know what to expect with the trail system, but Quebec trails are in better condition and the signage clearer than Ontario roads in the summertime. Part of that's because of the huge amount of snow they get, but it's also the culture. Snowmobiling isn't a niche pastime in Quebec. It is the culture. And in Chibougamau, where snowmobiling is king, they roll the red carpet out for snowmobilers. And don't worry about language issue. I know 5 words of French, maybe 3. And it wasn't ever a problem. They're used to Anglophones up there. Quebecers are incredibly warm to other snowmobilers. Doesn't matter what you speak.
Along with world-renowned trails and welcoming communities, the province of Quebec can always deliver on unique places to stay when you're on an adventure. And Neil and the guys came across one of those unique places to spend a night when they were in Chibougamau.
Those glamping dome are an idea I had because we want to do something different, and we want people to feel like they're doing an experience by the lodging, but keep it luxurious, or like with all the service you can get in a hotel. So it's a geodesic dome structure. Those are usually used for event or sometimes glamping, but we crank it up a bit to make sure you have the looks and the service you can find in an hotel room. We built the dry room in the basement of the garage because we travel with a lot of gear when you do backcountry or even trail snowmobile, or even like snowshoe and stuff, like everything that you can go in the backcountry in the winter. We have a lot of gear. We come back, the gear are wet, and we don't want the people to have all their gear in the dome and have everything in the way all the trip. So we build a dry room in the basement, then we can put a clothing there, the gear bag. We have a station to charge a radio and the GPS. So we just want to make sure that people have a good time, and it's on those little details that you do the difference in between something standard and something really good. There's a lot of things to do around, like all year round. We're open all year round. There's ice fishing, there's snowshoe, skiing, backcountry trail riding. There's a lot to do, like cultural visit also. In the summer you can do kayak and paddleboard right in front here. You can go fishing, mountain biking. There's a motocross track. So there's a lot to have fun in the area, and we're open year round. So.
Snowmobiling is just like racing, where there's always another bucket list track to race on, there's always another bucket list place to go and ride in, and Quebec has plenty of those options. Abitibi-Témiscamingue was next on our list of places to experience in the province. Abitibi-Témiscamingue is a huge region of Quebec that borders a good portion of Ontario. This region also includes a number of well-known snowmobiling towns like Rouyn-Noranda, Amos, Val-d'Or, Saint-Nazaire, and La Sarre. Plus, the proximity of each of these centers makes for nearly an unlimited resource for putting together multi-day saddlebag tours. With so many trails and options to help plan your adventure here, Abitibi-Témiscamingue has invested heavily in technology, which is a huge asset when it comes to planning your tour. Head to abitibi-témiscamingtourism.org for interactive maps and tour planners that not only show you the typical loops in the area with distances, but also places to stay and eat as well. Paired with the A Motoneige app, touring in the region is easy. I've been to this region on multiple occasions, and each time here is special. And with so many options for trails and tours, no two trips to Abitibi-Témiscamingue is ever the same. Now, Neil continued his Quebec ride experience here, and as a motorcycle enthusiast, he was able to pull from other personal experiences on two wheels and compare them with his trip here on a track and a pair of skis.
Abitibi-Témiscamingue is to the south of Chibougamau, and it feels a little less wild, a little more southern, if you can say that about a place in northern Quebec. There's more hotels, more gas stations. They're really just different places with different complexions. In Abitibi-Témiscamingue, I was struck by the trails, and not just by the amount of snow on them, but how much variation the trails have. When I'm on a motorcycle, I have no patience for bad roads, and by bad roads, I mean straight roads. I can hardly stay awake on the highway. But give me interesting terrain or trails, and I come alive. And that's how it was snowmobiling here. Open fields, and then tightly slaloming through the woods, and then bridges over rivers. So much variation, and everything is smoothly groomed. That's key because I've beaten up this body more than enough.
When I think back to my rides in Abitibi-Témiscamingue, I often think about the flow of the trails there. And just like here, in the driver's seat of the race car at Circuit of the Americas, I think the flow of a great racetrack like this one is the same as the flow of a great trail system, and Abitibi-Témiscamingue definitely delivers on flow. I tell you, driving a track like this definitely wants to make me get back on the seat of a snowmobile and head down some awesome trails. Now, driving on a racetrack is still completely different than a snowmobile ride, and I'm not endorsing racing your buddies on an open trail system. What I'm talking about with flow is the mental zone a great track or great trail delivers on as an experience. Remembering back to my last trip to the Abitibi-Témiscamingue region, I remember being in that zone, where it wasn't about speed, it was about the feeling you get when the sled and the trails are just working together with a pace that flows you into an awesome rhythm. It's not too often I get a ride experience where the world shrinks down on you, your sled, and the trail. Now, it may sound goofy or philosophical if you've never experienced this on a ride, but then again, maybe you've never ridden in Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Perhaps it's time to change that.
As an inexperienced snowmobiler, or maybe I should say a returning snowmobiler, I never felt over my head in these trails. The trails in Abitibi-Témiscamingue are challenging in the best kind of way. My skills got better, and it's like riding on a smooth road racing track that goes on and on forever. I wish off-road motorcycle trails were this thought out, this well maintained, and this is key, and this well marked.
Snowmobiling isn't the only way to hold on to handlebars in Quebec. There's also the growing popularity of backcountry riding in the province. On the earlier adventure to Chibougamau, Neil and the guys got the chance to ride off trail on snow bikes for the first time with the help of Dax from Chibougamau Adventures.
I'm born and raised in Chibougamau. I've done a snowcross race my entire life, and now that I'm retired, I wanted to do something different and something that passioned me a lot. So the goal of Chibougamau Aventure is pretty simple. It's to receive people with good installation and with good guide, and go in the backcountry and make sure they have one of the best time of their life.
Snow bikes. I was a little intimidated by them because I couldn't imagine they'd feel like a motorcycle. Seeing a ski and the end of a fork and then a track where the knobby tire should be just seems so odd. And then here I am on a lake in deep snow, and just climbing on is weird. Snow bikes sit high, and when you're up to your knees in snow, it's like standing beside a monster truck. But I climbed on, hit the starter, put the bike into gear, and rode off. And it felt like a motorcycle, sort of. But where a bike rolls over a rounded tire when you corner, the snow bike's track remains flat, so it turns by compressing the snow into like a berm on a motocross track. Now on the lake, it was unbelievably fun. With its weight and length, there's a lot more of both than a regular bike. It's not as nimble as a dirt bike, but it's not as cumbersome as I thought it would be. And then I rode off into the lake onto the trails that we made with snowmobiles to get to the lake. And that's when things got interesting. When you're on packed snow and you turn a snow bike, it rides up on the edge of the track. It felt to me like sitting in a kitchen chair and leaning back and trying to balance on the rear legs. It's a little disconcerting. The sensation is completely different to riding in deep snow on the lake. Now this is where Chibougamau is ideal. It's wild, remote country, and Dex knew where to take us so we wouldn't have to get anywhere near marked snowmobile trails, because snow bikes and snowmobiles are different animals that don't mix. And ideally, a snow bike needs a lot of snow, and in Chibougamau, they get a lot of snow. You should really try snow bikes if you're at all interested in motorcycles or snowmobiles, and I know you are. And give Dex a call. He's the guy.
My experience with snow bikes is pretty limited, and I admit I'm more at home with a track and 2 skis instead of a track and 1, but I was pleasantly surprised at how intuitive a snow bike is to ride, especially if you have some motorcycle skills. Clutching and leaning came in pretty naturally, and carving across a slope was much easier than trying to get a sled up on edge to side hill. It would take some time to master the skills needed to really understand what a snow bike can do, but in a relatively short period of time, even a novice will be having fun and be carving up the snow. Of course, it helps when you're in the right location, and Chibougamau is one of those locations. Great snowpack and plenty of places to free ride make this region an excellent choice to ride in, even if it's just for the day to check off another box on the bucket list. Well, our race here at COTA Circuit of the Americas is over, and let me tell you, what an experience here.
Over the last few days, our team has run 2 cars and 10 drivers here at COTA for the World Racing League and finished 5th and 6th in our GT class of 17 cars. Now in total, there were over 90 cars in the whole field, and that even included a couple of NASCAR drivers with Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon. Now it was pretty cool to go door to door with their car, even if it was just for a few seconds as they crushed us going by. Our little Scion FRS 4-cylinder didn't stand a chance against their beast, but what a memory to take away from my time in the seat here at Circuit of the Americas.
Well, they say rubbin's racing, but this car got a little bit more than a rub. The front end and the back end are damaged pretty heavily, and this thing is going to need a whole new tub. Ahead of me now is a little over a 3,000 kilometer drive to get back to Ontario, but that's going to bring me closer to snow and snowmobiles. Now, coming down here to COTA has definitely checked off a box on my racing bucket list, and hopefully I can check off a few snowmobiling bucket list boxes as we work through this season of STV. Now, hopefully you'll join me next time when we're back on the snow.